Hi, it's Daniel Wyatt from MixmasterWyatt.com, and we're here today to look at a new sound toy, fresh for fall, a new sound toy. But I would almost call this a sound tool. Anyone remember sound tools? Taking it back there. But it is a wonderful new EQ from the geniuses at Soundtoys. And this thing works incredibly well as a standalone equalizer, but also it's great for more tonal control in Soundtoys 5 effect rack. So let's take a look at this EQ. It is the Sie-Q. I texted Mitch from Soundtoys because I didn't want to call it the Sie-Q. And it's the Sie-Q from Siemens. And he said if you're German, you can call it the Z-Q from Siemens. But it's the Sie-Q. And it is a module out of the Siemens Citral consoles from the 60s. It has that cool 1960s military look. And it was a W295B, which was a very coveted EQ module from that console. And the folklore says that the Beatles used this console to mix their film music. So it has a very decorated past. So let's take a look at the EQ. This EQ is basically almost like a home stereo high and low shelving EQ, but also has a mid-range bell component to it. And of course, because it's Soundtoys, it has drive. So it's not just a clean analog EQ, it is a analog EQ with saturation and attitude. Of course, because it's Soundtoys, right? If we look at the curves here is the low band, and you can see it's really what I would call in my book a resonant shelf EQ. Why is it a resonant shelf EQ for those who don't know? It gives you a little dip before your boost, and you can see that. And then it also gives you a little boost before your cut. So you get a little bit of a bump before you cut, and you get a little bit of a dip before you boost. And if you notice, what we call the shoulder of the shelf, if you were lying down sideways, it could maybe look like a shoulder, is sort of, starts pretty low. Maybe looks like 200 or so, sort of in the 300, 200 zone. But the bulk of the meat happens around 100 and below. So why do they do that? They do that because low mids, 500, 400, 300, can be a little muddy. So they want to give you the weight of the low end below the mud zone. So you can put serious weight on things in additive EQ, and you can use it, of course, reductively. But I think this thing really shines on the additive side. Of course, you can do whatever you want with the EQ. But the concept is that the extension, as we would call it, happens below the mud zone in the low band. And in the high band, very similar kind of philosophy and design. There we don't really see a resonance. It's what I would call almost like an analog shelf. It's not a Baxendal shape. It's got a sort of a nonlinear thing. But here, I think the thing to take note of is, again, the meat of the boost and also the cut happens after the upper mids. And the concept of the philosophy here is that you want to be able to boost north of the upper mids so that there's no harshness. And you can add real air without boosting the upper mids unintentionally and getting a harsh sound. If we look at the mid-range bell EQ, it's wide. Again, another, this is not a mistake or just a coincidence. Wide boosts in the mid-range can be very smooth. Narrow boosts in the mid-range can be very harsh. And it has this cool auto EQ thing that we see in so many different kinds of EQs, APIs, all kinds of vintage EQs, and also modeled on the FabFilter Pro Q2. They do this too. They give you the option that as you boost, the Q narrows automatically. And there's a logic there, of course. If you're doing a little boost, it should be wide. A little boost narrow in the mid-range, you probably wouldn't even hear it. And if you're doing a lot of boost, you wouldn't boost it wide. The EQ thinks that you're wanting to get at something in particular. So this gentle mid-range boost allows you to dial in the mid-range, which is such a critical part of getting any sound to really speak. So those are the curves there. And of course, because it's Soundtoys, it has to have a saturation component. So here is the drive. And you know me, I like to see my saturation. Not that it really changes the way you work, but it's always interesting to me, the distribution of even and odd ordered harmonics and whether it looks like a digital algorithm or a real quirky analog modeling. So you're not going to hear this. I'm going to turn down the master fader unless you like to listen to sine waves. But we'll turn on our oscillator. And this is just a simple logic oscillator. And I put the fundamental at 100 just because it's easy math. And we are going to use our FabFilter Pro Q2. And we're going to look at our beautiful sine wave here. So that is our clean sine wave. And now let's turn on the CQ. And we'll notice a little, talking about shoulders, but a little bump here right around, let's turn this into frequencies. And we see a bump here at 200. So 200 is an even ordered harmonic. It's the first even ordered harmonic. Okay, so now let's push the drive and let's take a look at the saturation in this super cool vintage German 1960s EQ. So as we push the drive up here, look at these little mountain ranges pop up. And we can stop right there. And what do we see? Well, we see the fundamental at 100. Here's an even ordered harmonic at 200. Here's an odd ordered harmonic at 300, even at 4, odd at 5, a little dip at 6. And we can see what is here a nonlinear distribution of the even and odd ordered harmonics. Okay, why do we care? Well, even and odd ordered harmonics have a little bit of a different attitude. Tape is typically odd ordered harmonics and has a little edge to it, a little bite. Even ordered harmonics tend to be warm and fuzzy, and most tubes sort of have even and odd ordered harmonics. So this is almost sort of like a tube stage, but there's no tubes in the CQ. Okay. So now we can see our saturation just for fun because it's cool. We'll close this up and let's take a look at the use of this in context. So here is my Soundtoys 5 effect rack. And let's make this small so it fits on our screen. And this is going to be a very, very cool use of this CQ because, of course, in all of the modulating effects and all the Soundtoys, we have tone controls. You know, there are lots and lots of tone controls. But to have a dedicated EQ where we can add some serious low-end weight or take it away, or add some top air or dial in the mid-range is quick and easy and cool and fun. So here I have a raw synth bass. Let's check it out with no effects. Now let's go to the effect rack. So here in the effect rack, I want to sort of beef up this bass and make it big room. So I have a CQ, and then as a little bonus tip for this video tutorial, people always want to know, oh, I wish I had reverb in my effect rack. Well, you do, because Echo Boy has lots and lots of reverbs. If you go to the preset button here, we turn on the red, the presets pop up down here, and you have reverbs and spaces, because reverb, of course, is a delay-based effect. One of my favorites is infinite space. So now we have a reverb here. And of course, I love to saturate my reverb with more saturation, more and more. Saturation on top of saturation. So one of the best saturators that people don't always celebrate as much as they should is the Radiator, which comes out of an Altec console. It's that Motown sound. And the input and output on this both have different flavors of saturation. And there's also some tonal controls of bass and treble. So let's turn off the reverb first. Let's turn off the Radiator. And let's reset this. And anytime you need to reset CQ, if you hold down the option and you click on the different knobs, they will reset. Okay, so first let's saturate this sound, and let's listen to the saturation first, and then let's EQ it a little bit. So what you notice is it can take quite a bit of drive without crunching out. So it's got some really good headroom within the saturation of the plugin. All right, so now finally let's boost around here and let's beef up this bass. And you can already feel the power of those fixed shelves boosting below the mud and above the harsh upper mids. And so sometimes I like to do the highs and lows first and do the middle last. You can do it however you like. So let's do a little middle. So the way I would really describe this EQ is it's tight, it's not too ringy, but it also has this clean, tight saturation. It doesn't sound retro at all. It sounds clean, it sounds new, but it has some character and it has some personality. It's super easy to use and it works incredibly well, as we said, in the effect rack. Okay, so now we've beefed up the sound, and I know there's always going to be people on the YouTube saying, all you did was make it louder, but let's not get into all that. That's part, what an EQ does is it creates some loudness. So now that we've beefed it up, let's throw a little bit of this nice Echo Boy reverb on. And then just for the final touch, let's do some saturation here. Let's do some saturation with Radiator, saturating our reverb sound. So again, if we option click, we can reset, and we'll saturate our CQ and reverb combination here. Ah, there you go. So saturated, so fat, so analog, so Soundtoys. Thank you for this sound tool, Soundtoys. I think everyone's going to have a lot of fun with this EQ. It's so wonderful to start to add new tools to the effect rack. Of course, my wish list is a really cool flanger. I've been asking them to do that for a while now. I think it's on the chop block. Who knows, maybe another cool reverb is coming, and we just keep adding toys and toys and tools to our effect rack. And you can see how incredibly transformative this is when you see the before and after. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm Daniel Wyatt from MixmasterWyatt.com.